glad to connect with you all. I'm excited that you have gotten involved in this data quality internship. I hope it's been, I guess I'm kind of coming in at the end of it. So I hope it's been going really well. And I know you talked with my colleague Andre came in a few weeks ago and shared OSM Cha, which has been another project been pretty closely involved with. So I'm excited for more data quality. I'm here to show you a bit about how Mapbox Studio works and how to build maps with it, and explain a bit about Mapbox. So I'll jump into that and share my screen. But please, I'm very okay with getting interrupted. So if you want to speak up at any time or type in the chat, please go ahead. This hour we're together is for you all. I want you to have a chance to learn something, and so make sure you're learning and let me know if I can go into something deeper or explain something a little bit better. So let me make sure this is, one second. I have a new computer here and I may have to just make one change so that I can share with you all. Okay, I'm gonna have to, so I'll quickly rejoin so that I have the right permissions. Sorry about this.
No problem. See you in a minute. Just a reminder to register for a Mapbox account if you haven't already. So this is what Becky sent these instructions out today in the chat, but just to register if you haven't already. That will save some time.
All right, let's give this another shot. Oh, that's better. All right, can you see some slides?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay, great. Let me just make that full screen. Today, I'm gonna take you through Mapbox Studio and GLJS. Some of the things that it would be great when you have a chance to do is register for Mapbox account. That's free for everybody. There's a great getting started guide, and there's some great tutorials as well to get started. But I'll walk through everything and give you an idea of how it all works. I'm going to start with talking about Mapbox in general, what we do and what Mapbox community is about. That's the team I lead. And then I'll tell you a bit about Mapbox Studio and do a demo, and then a little bit on making an interactive map. We won't be covering number 4 today. We won't be doing tile processing, but everything else under this agenda. We build tools for developers and designers to make maps, and part of that is built on top of our ever updating map. We consume a lot of different data sources for our base map and for our search and for our directions products. OpenStreetMap is a really key component of all of those things. And so we're continually on a daily basis consuming data on OSM. And as Andre probably shared with you all, we have our own internal processes for doing data quality checks and making sure that what comes into Mapbox products we have trust in its quality and accuracy. There's 3 main things that we provide at Mapbox. One is base maps, so the visual maps and all the interaction around them. Secondly, search, so geocoding places. And then third, a whole suite of navigation tools. So starting with how do you get from point A to point B, what are the directions, to things which try to do that kind of analysis at scale for analyzing accessibility. For instance, I've been involved with a project, several projects, where we're trying to analyze the amount of access to vaccine sites, determine what portion of populations are within a easy access of vaccination sites and which ones are being left out in order to calculate equitable distribution. And that kind of calculation is actually based ultimately off of our navigation tools. And we build tools, APIs and SDKs that run off of the web in JavaScript, or if, for mobile developers, iOS and Android. We'll be focusing just on building maps on the web today. Here's a map, a demo map that we provide. It's a template called Finder. This is you basically actually, to build this, you just bring a spreadsheet on Google Sheets, which has latitude and longitude columns, and then it builds a presentation where there's a listing of all your sites, and you can do search and you can filter. But I'm showing this because I wanted to give you some idea of the different components that make up, if you've seen a map on the web that's built with Mapbox, what are the different components of it? And there's pieces of it which are front-end code, or this is the code that runs in the web browser when a map is being loaded and interacted with and shown. We have our Mapbox APIs. An API is like a way that computers can talk to each other, and those are being used here. There's the geospatial data. Here in this case, we have a geospatial data set of libraries in Washington State in the United States. And then there's the base map tiles. So that's like, the roads, the terrain, the boundaries, a lot of the stuff that gets created in OpenStreetMap, other data sets as well, gets rendered. And that's where, if you have custom data, you place that on top. And so, front end are things like HTML and JavaScript and CSS. Don't worry if those things are not familiar to you. What I'll show today is largely just cut and copy and paste. So copy a template and then paste it, and then make some modifications. And then uses our search service to do geocoding, and our maps to actually, for that underlying base map of the area. And you may or may not be a little familiar with us, at least from talking with Andre, but we're in a lot of things that you may have already used or may be using every day. So from everything from Strava to weather to a lot of media companies, we're in a lot of things around the world. Here in the U.S., one of the key things we've done is the National Vaccine Finder, vaccines.gov. And so every vaccine site has been plotted, and you can search and find an appointment. And I'll be the first to admit that we have a tragic oversupply in the US, and I'm also very interested in working on this problem around the world to getting better distribution, so that like this kind of map can be available just about everywhere. This is Strava, this is Weather Channel. And the team that I work on is Mapbox Community. We work with nonprofits, we work with researchers, we work a lot with the OpenStreetMap community. Anything where there's a positive impact, there's a social mission that we share with folks, we provide support. So it's organizations like PATH, Global Health NGO, we've done a lot of work with them on malaria, in Zambia and in other locations. Boston Children's Hospital, that's a research institution that actually builds vaccines.gov, the vaccine finder site. Here in the US, Catholic Charities USA, they do disaster response, so we built an operational dashboard. But around the world, we work with IFRC, the Red Cross, with UNOCHA, UNHCR, so all the big response agencies, and small entities as well. Here's a International Rescue Committee. So let's say we work with UNHCR, but also with NGOs that are involved in refugee and displaced people's issues. So you can always reach us at community@mapbox.com. Feel free to email if there's any project you think we could be helpful with. And let's talk about maps. the maps that you see on the web there's three main components. One is the data, the underlying data, and that gets processed. One of the things that Mapbox has invested a lot of time and effort into is processing data so that it's really fast and really easy to work with. We process in what we call vector tiles. That's a technology that kind of makes everything work. And then in the web browser, you get the data, and then separately you get rules for styling the data. So there's a map of San Francisco in the lower right, things like coloring the parks that shade of green or the highways that orange, how big to make those city labels, all the cartographic rules that you want to apply to your underlying data. That's shipped to the browser separately from the data, and then in the browser, it's combining those and visualizing them. And the advantage there is that it's fast, and you can also then change things dynamically on the front end. So, for example, if you wanted to say switch between a road network view or in a satellite view, that can all be very dynamically controlled in the front end without having to go back to Mapbox and request more data. Ultimately, it's more optimal, more optimized, and there's more freedom and creativity to work with the data in this kind of setup. And the way we do design is with a tool called Mapbox Studio, which is all based on the web. And this is a kind of a visual environment where you can take data and apply those styles to them. And it's both, there's very simple ways to get started, which I'll show, and then it can get it can go quite deep as well. And when you're designing maps that are interactive and on the web, there's a lot of things you have to take in mind. One of the key things is, you're going to be going from low zoom, looking at a wide area, all the way down to a very close up. And all along the way, you have to make choices about how much data you show. So you can see in San Francisco, as you zoom in, only at a certain point does it bring in the street labels and the neighborhood names and the parks. If you were to show all that data when you were zoomed out here, it's too much information. It would just overwhelm the map. And so you have to be able to design for, both very close up and very far out within the same map. And so that's part of the challenge that Mapbox Studio helps with. We have a lot of customization. You can add custom data. We provide base maps, and there's a lot of good starting places to begin with. And here's just for inspiration, some examples from our resident cartographer, Johnny Walker, of and I'm not going to be able to show you how to do something like this because it's way in his he has some magic skills of really pushing the edges of what you can do with data. But you can see there's 3D capabilities. You can do a lot with the styling, a lot with the color to do really evocative, powerful images, including things like setting the color of the sky and working how really changing the lighting in 3D. So it's there's a lot of different, it's very powerful. One concept that I'll go into in a minute is layers versus components. So within Studio, we have there's a number of layers. If you're familiar with using QGIS, when you set up QGIS, you add a number of data sources, and each of those is a layer in your map, and then you can style those separately. It's the same idea in Mapbox Studio. Layer is a combination of a data source and the rules for coloring it. So here let me get that running again. So just seeing this screenshot, you can see at the top here, it's a little fuzzy, but place labels. So there's a layer for all of the countries and rules for how you style countries, at what size, what font, at what zoom levels you see them. There's rules for that at the the state or district level, and then for individual settlements, you have different rules, because you can see here's a map of Paris. You see the Paris is styled at a certain size. Other small neighborhoods are styled a little bit smaller, a little bit less dominant colors, and also all in all caps. So it's each of those is a separate layer in Mapbox Studio. Components are basically a collection of layers that you can style together, because often you'll have related things. Like, let's say you have a road network and you want to use a consistent font across the road network, whether it's a major road or whether it's a neighborhood road, but you want to style those a little bit differently. And what components do is kind of simplifies Mapbox Studio a little bit. So it takes a collection of layers and it has a simplified set of rules that it applies to all of those layers. And that's what, when I show you Studio, we'll start with components. All right, we'll start now. Before I jump into Studio, and actually, I'm gonna, even before going into Studio, I'm gonna start with actually getting some data out of OpenStreetMap for us to work with. But before I jump into that, I just want to pause and see if there's any questions at this point.
Hey, Mikhail.
Hey.
Well, from the demonstration, I've seen the 3D map which you displayed there. Has any organization been able to use it, like, let's say, for humanitarian purposes? I've mainly seen them in documentaries, especially nature documentaries and all that, but I haven't seen them in real use, especially in humanitarian work.
Yeah, there's been, in the humanitarian realms, there has definitely been use of the 3D terrain in terms of advocacy. So there's a group, World Central Kitchen, which we work with a lot. They deploy and cook food for people immediately after disaster, really rapidly. And there was recently they deployed to the island of La Palma, which had a volcano, and they were using some 3D maps there to really be evocative of the situation there. And there's some other examples as well. Now, as far as operationally, no, not yet. I don't think, nothing that I know of. This is still pretty new, and the operational stuff takes a little bit more time. And you also have to think, when is it actually going to be most useful? And I think there are certain circumstances where it is. Like I said, the volcano, and having terrain could be very useful as you are trying to understand the flow of lava and what's at risk. Areas under landslide risk, I can imagine as well. So it's certainly possible, and if there's, I think it needs some. You want to use the right tool for the situation, and so I think there's some operational use, but it definitely needs to be figured out what the right applications are.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Get that on the way. So I'm going to start with getting some data out of OpenStreetMap to work with. And I hope you're familiar with Overpass Turbo. Excellent tool for doing small queries and getting and extracting data in a really easy way. I thought I'd just pull some data. Peter and Lucy are on as well. So they've spent a lot of time on this data. And I thought for the demo, I thought I'd pull school data from the area out of OpenStreetMap. So the query is already set up, but let me just start in. to start with, because there's kind of funny language to use with Overpass Turbo. I don't even really know how to use it, but the wizard is pretty great because you could just type in a tag, amenity equals school, and then I'll build and run query. And then it's actually gone ahead and generated this on the left, which is the query. And then on the right, you can see the results. One thing I want to do is there's a combination here of points and polygons. And there's ways of dealing with polygons, of course, but just for simplicity's sake, I just want to deal for the demo. I just want to deal with nodes. So I'm going to remove the ways and relations from the query and run again. And wait. Sometimes you have to do. This happens. Let's give it one more try. If overpass is over, oh, hooray, good. So there's the results, just the points, and then export, and then you can download what you want to download is as GeoJSON. So that's been downloaded. Next, we go to Mapbox Studio. So when you log into Mapbox Studio, you come here first. There's a tab for styles. These are kind of the styled maps we work with. And then there's tile sets. And what we want to do is create a tile set from that data we extracted from Overpass. There's a couple ways of doing this, but just for the demo, the simple way of doing it, you click new tile set. I have my GeoJSON downloaded. I'm just going to drag it over. And it's asking me to confirm, okay. And so now it's been uploaded, and then it's going to be processed. It's going to process that so that it's available as vector tiles on Mapbox. And just give that a second. All right, great. So that's done. So back on styles, if you want to start new style, and the first thing you do is you can choose a template to begin with, or you can start from scratch. I always start with a template because it's a good starting point. And there's a few different options to begin with. This is basic. It's kind of a all-purpose map. There's monochrome, which has a simplified palette, color palette, and even fewer features. Streets is complete, kind of a base map. And then there's things like outdoors. You can see here has terrain in 3D. I can give you a sense of the 3D from just tilting there. And then there's satellite options as well. I think I'm just going to start with monochrome, and you can change the colors to start with. But I'm not going to go too crazy. I'm just going to do gray and customize. So we've dropped into Mapbox Studio. One of the first things I want to do is just change the name. So Hot Live Demo. And then you can see here on the left, here are our components for the map. There's administrative boundaries, buildings, land, water and sky, natural features, place labels, points of interest, the road network, and transit. If we wanted to change the color, the base color here on monochrome, you can see there's just one color and applies different shades to different features automatically based off of that color. You see, if you really want to be evocative of something, you can use a lot of different options. I don't like this, so actually I can just go back in the history tab up here in the upper right, and I can just say, all right, go back to where I was before. But then you can control each of these features, these components separately. So here, land, water, and sky. You can see land here is marked as detailed, but you can simplify it. And if you, let me just zoom in here if you to see the difference there. See, there's actually a little bit of terrain, land use here. So these are forested areas up in the hills here. Why don't I go to Kenya, since that's where I was gonna do the demo, by the way. Oh, not Kentucky. Yes. So yeah, you can simplify or make detailed. You can switch to an outdoor style. If we zoom in, should be able to see a bit more terrain. And sky, and that sky is more appropriate when we're doing with 3D. So I just tilted the map so that we can see a 3D view. And here, turned off the sky, but now I've turned it back on. There's different, yeah, you can set morning, afternoon, sunset, and you can further play around and customize those colors. And then similar, things from the road network. If I wanted to change the color scheme on the road network, I can do that. Oh, never mind. That changes the colors for everything. Let me zoom in a little bit in Nairobi. So zooming in a little bit, you can see the labels for the roads come in. If I didn't want the labels for some reason, I can easily switch those off. And you can turn on lots of different options. Oh, you can change the language. I don't know if we have a lot of translations. I think most everything is going to be in English, but if there was, let's see, are there any Japanese translations in the Nairobi? Not a great place for most everything's in English, but you can change the label style if you wish. And this will be kind of fun. So here we can, if we wanted to extrude our buildings, so you can see all the building footprints there, but for the buildings which have details on height, you can see that this is not every building, but you can see some of the, what is this, that's the Kenyatta Center here, I think.
Hi, Kel.
Hey, yes.
Please, I'm also trying to copy what you're doing, but when I exported the JSON file into the tile set, it says the difference between the request time and the current time is too large, so it didn't load.
You saying you got an error on
yeah, after that the data from the overpass table.
Did you get an error on on Mapbox when you uploaded, or an error with overpass?
No, an error on Mapbox.
Cool. What was the error that you got again?
It's telling me the difference between the request time and the current time is too large.
Could you copy and paste that into the chat so I can see if you're able to copy and paste the error? Let me see if I can do some live debugging, and then otherwise we can follow up afterwards if I'm not able to sort it out in a minute. Yeah, feel free to copy paste that into the chat, and I'll see. While we're getting that bug, yeah, there's just, I think that's all I think you get a sense of the components. They're pretty powerful, and you can control a lot of things in a really straightforward interface. And then just for completeness, there's a tab here in the upper right, layers. And here's, if you really need to get in some of the details of how to style things. Like here's the extruded buildings. Here's where you can actually control things in a lot of detail. For instance, I'm just going to mess around a little bit. If you wanted to make the buildings even more extruded, I can multiply them. Let's go crazy. So now you can see they're even bigger. Or you can change the base height. So you can see by default they're up a little bit higher. So there's a lot more options here on layers. For a lot of times components are going to be sufficient. And then oh yeah, let me just show you 3D. I'm going to zoom out so you get a sense of that. So here, there's a few different options. 3D terrain, you just enable terrain, and then let's see, if we go down here, Zingong, where's the hills? Oh, yeah, well, there's Mount Kenya, so that will enhance that a little bit. So you can see here we've added 3D, and you can get a sense of kind of the rise of Mount Kenya from the landscape. I'll just address the chat a little bit. Is there a way to share screenshots in Zoom? I don't know. Like I said, we can follow up as well. You can even if we don't sort it out right now. Gustavo asks, how do I change the POI icons? I tried once to create my own style, but could not change the icons easily. I'll get out of looking at 3D. Let me go back in Nairobi. And I'll go, since Moy Airbase is showing up with an icon, I'll show you how to do that in layers, actually. So if you go into layers, let me see. It's going to be point of interest. Airport label. Okay. So yeah, so that's actually a nice trick. You can click on the map, and it will show you all of the layers which are present at that point. And you can see one of them is there's land use, but also airport label. So here's the panel for customizing the airport label. And you can see here there's icon is one panel. So I'll override that, and interesting. If I wanted to change that to something else, I'm going to clear the, let's see, processing range. All right, so I just cleared the value, and then you can see here in this panel, it's showing a lot of different options of icons you can choose. Now, of course, an airplane is the most appropriate, but as you can see, I can just as an example, here you can select different icons to represent the location of the airbase. And then Michael asks, I guess, could you make 3D animations? And Michael asks, can you make an analysis in the form of an animation of a place, increase of number of buildings in place over time? Yeah, so there's some parts to that. Why don't I go ahead and go to the next step in the demo, and then I can try to answer that question a little bit towards the end, after a couple other steps. So back to just our map of Nairobi, and tilt that right. Here's Kibera. And so remember, we uploaded that data. If I want to add it, I can easily do that as a component with data visualizations. So the first thing you do is select data. I have quite a lot of sources, but if you haven't used Mapbox a lot, you only have one. And I've selected the data I just uploaded. And then the next step is select the data visualization type. And you can do circles. I'm going to do symbols. And this adds a dot and a label. So you can see there, it's added labels with the names of some of the schools automatically, and then some of the points. And you can do things like, you can already see that it's automatically trying to do something interesting with the data. It picked one of the fields. Every school, all the schools in Kibera have been, there's a lot of different features which have been mapped, like whether there's hand washing station or not. I'm gonna choose whether it's what kind of operator it is. And let's see. Circle is fine. I'll make sure that's a string. And no available values. Oh, interesting. Okay. That's not an actual good field to use. Operator type. Great. So it did something automatic where it just chose different symbols for the different values for operator. I'm going to simplify a little bit, and I just want to show government schools different from the rest. So I'll delete some of these options here. And yeah, basically, if it's a government school, it's marked with one of these markers. Private but nonprofit schools have marked with this triangle, and you can see that it's just automatically applied. Want to change the color to something a little bit more. Ooh. How about just black? Something that's a little bit easy. And I'm going to actually change the halo. The halo is the color around the text to help it show up against the background. So here it shows white, so now it's pretty readable. I wanted to increase the size of the text. I can increase the size of the text. Allow overlap is handy. Now it's going to show as much as possible. Yeah, so just doing that has given us a map with interactive map with OSM data on it. Now, if I want to use it, there's this publish button. Just click publish. It shows you, here you can see where we started. And then you can see where we've gotten to. And I'm not claiming this is great. I'm just doing this on the fly as part of the demo. That's published. So share is useful. The preview is actually just gives you just the preview link, which I just clicked that button to copy. Gives you an interactive map that you can share. And so this is a shareable URL. If you wanted to take a look at it yourselves, I've pasted it into the chat, and you can zoom in and out. And you can see it brings in the It brings in the buildings at a certain point. I'm curious, I know there's a couple of buildings in, particularly the one, this is where the Mapbox office is. Oh, Peter, Lucy, you should add height. So we can see how high the office is. There's a few taller buildings in Kibera. That's one of them. So that's published style. Is it possible to show a legend? Well, let me go to the next step, which is how do you take a map style and then use it on a web map? I'll show you this end result and then give you a little bit of an idea of what this looks like, and then I'll start to point at some of the examples that you can copy and paste and make things really easy. So here's the map I pre-designed and built a little interactive experience around. For Kibera here, this is using the number of students in each school, and it's scaling the size of the point by the number of students. And then I colored government schools green and other schools purple. And then I added a little bit of ability. You click on it, and you can see it does a pop-up with the name of the school, the number of teachers, but I could have shown other properties as well. And then it zooms in, and you can also see when I zoom in close, it switches to satellite view. So just give you a sense of another location. I believe that's Olympic School. And let me just show you a little bit of the anatomy of how that's built. I'm not expecting you to understand the code, but I'll just point it out, and then I'll go to some examples that you can just easily copy and paste from, including things to do like time series data, legends, stuff like that. All right, so now don't want to overwhelm you with code, but let me just point out a couple things here. This long string of random seeming characters that I highlighted is what we call a token. They're on the account page in Mapbox. I'll go to the account page here. This is my account, and then there's a list of access tokens, and you need to use these in order to use Mapbox in a web map. It associates that map with your Mapbox account. So that's the first part that's important to configure. And then you see in this second part, there's a few things to note. This code here is what actually specifies the map that I built. So I'll go back to the map in the studio and back to share developer resources, and there's a style URL. That's what's here. And actually, oh, the token is here too. That makes it easy. So that's what this this bit of stuff looks like. And then to center the map on Kibera, it's the longitude and latitude and the zoom. And then the rest of this part here is what actually controls what happens when I click. So you can see that click, it does a pop-up, and then it zooms in. All of that's controlled by that code here. But don't expect you to be able to run code. But a lot of what you can do is just simply by copying and pasting. So let me time slider Mapbox example. I find a lot of examples just by searching on Google. And here is an example which takes some data, and then as you drag that slider, you can see it's just filtering month by month from 2015, which earthquakes to show. And then it's styled, see, it's styled both by the size of the circle and by the color, the magnitude of that earthquake. I'll get to your question in a second, Becky. And then here's the code for this map. The best way of working with a lot of these things is you can copy and paste and then modify a little bit, like to just reference your map. And just from these starting points, a little bit of modification, you can use a time slider for your data set. You can also click edit in JS Fiddle, which is a nice tool, where you can just easily, here you can see the access token and the style, where you can easily like start to change things. And then once you've gotten it working, export and save and post the map up on the web. And for legends, let me see if we have a legends example. Mapbox legend example. Yeah, so you can see this tutorial making a choropleth map also shows you how to make a legend. And here, this is population density. And so it's the legend's just reflecting population density of these US states. So this is actually great because this is a full tutorial which kind of explains how things work. And then at the very end, again, there's code which you can just copy and paste and modify. Becky asked what data formats Mapbox accepts. We accept shapefile, CSV, and GeoJSON. And in some cases, KML and GPX. I would say, or if you're working with raster, GeoTIFFs. But I'd say the easiest thing to work with is GeoJSON if you can get it. So like back on Overpass, when I exported, downloading that as GeoJSON was it's the format that we use the most internally at Mapbox. So it's the best one. But we can take KML, GPX, CSV, shapefile, but sometimes it takes a little bit more massaging to get it in the right shape. That was a scope of what other questions do you have? That was a scope of what I wanted to cover. Do you all have ideas for the kind of thing you'd like to build in terms of interactive maps from data that you've collected or from data quality work you've been doing? What kinds of tools would be useful for data quality or for other applications?
What was your question, Mikhail?
What are your questions is my question. Or what kinds of ideas do you have for maps that you want to build with OSM data or otherwise?
I'll speak for myself. Sorry. I would like to make an interactive map, especially with regards to development growth. You see, we've done schools before, and we can see the population is always changing on the time. So I would really like to have a way to figure out how to make a map which would show the population at 2015 was at a certain point, and in 2022 is at a certain position. I would really like to build something like that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's see, and that would take some work, and I'd be happy to that sounds like a great project. This is the start. This would be a starting point. Could work together on. The key thing there, I'd say the key thing there is not necessarily the map. That's kind of the end point, which has its challenges, but is definitely doable. The key thing there is getting the data. So if you have the data sets prepared for each year with good population numbers, that's, if you're able to find a good source for that, then that I would say is like is the hardest part of that, and then putting it together for a map would be some work to do, but I can see the way forward on that. The population data is sometimes hard to find. Becky, you have your hand up.
Hi, Michael. So we've been doing validation in different countries, like all over the world. So I'm thinking of making a map. I've seen an example of one that you've showed us of showing the different number of projects we've done in a specific country. And then like, depending on the number of projects we have done, the size increases. Like if you've done like so many projects in for example, it's like a big circle, then it varies that. So I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be cool. I think let me show you one another thing which could prove useful for putting something like that together. And that's a sheet mapper. And what sheet mapper does is it basically builds, it's another way of building a map. There's, not to confuse things, but there's always a lot more than one way of doing things. You all are familiar with that from OSM, of course. And sheet mapper is really just a simple way of building an interactive map based entirely off of a Google sheet. So within the Google sheet, you have a latitude and longitude. If you set a latitude and longitude column, and then add other data as appropriate for each row, sheet mapper will build a nice interactive map out of it. There's a full tutorial that goes really like step by step of how to structure the data, how to prepare it to put into sheet mapper, how to set up, on your custom base map or standard base map, how to configure everything. And it shows you exactly what to edit and then how to get it on the web. And what you said would take a little bit of tweaking, because you'd want to control the size of the circles according to maybe a column where you record the number of projects in each location. But that's certainly something we could take a look at together. I'll paste the link to sheet mapper in the chat. Find the right. I can't find the chat. So, oh, there it is. So there's a link to sheet mapper. Oh, great. Sam got me already. Awesome. Thank you. Cool. What other questions or other ideas? Like I say, I'm happy to definitely, like, here's my email. I'm really happy to ride along, help figure out how to build some maps with you all. Any other ideas or questions before we have to depart?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah. Hi, Michael.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hi.
I have a question. It's possible to download the digital elevation model data in Mapbox?
No, well, only the data elevation model is been prepared just for use within building maps in Mapbox. So you can't download it for doing, if you wanted a digital elevation model for your GIS system or whatever, you'd have to source it someplace else. You can't download it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Kobe has a question in chat. Could Mapbox work with data on tracking social media activity, where most common hashtags originate? Yeah, again, there the challenge a lot of the work would be, yeah, gathering that data and then geocoding it. I guess where common hashtags originate, you would need to there almost identify which accounts were, were popularizing which hashtags and where they were located. So it's a bit of that would be a data exercise outside of the scope of Mapbox. But once you had collected all of that social media activity data, you could visualize it with Mapbox. Well, cool. We're at the hour. Hope that was useful for y'all. Really definitely want to. I'd love to see some maps come out of this. So please, like I said, please reach out with your ideas, and we can build some stuff together. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Michael.
Okay.